In this lesson, we'll be learning about phylum Annelida, which is our last worm phylum. So we've learned about Platyhelminthes, which are flatworms, phylum Nematoda, which are roundworms, and now phylum Annelida. Annelida means little ring in Latin, and these are segmented worms. So you might just call them worms because these are worms that you're probably really familiar with, especially earthworms, but we can be more specific in calling them segmented worms because we have flatworms and roundworms as well. Annelids are worms with segmented bodies. They have a true coelom, and remember, a coelom is a body cavity, and with a true coelom it's lined with mesoderm. And the body segments are separated by septa, which are internal walls. So here's a reminder or a review about coeloms. In flatworms, here's the gut, and then everything's just kind of filled and mushed in all the other organs. There's no real gap. In roundworms, nematodes, they're over here. Their gut, they do have a space, so there is a cavity, but it's not lined in mesoderm, which is the red stuff. But in true coelomates, which are annelids, and all of the other phyla we'll be talking about, humans, we are even coelomates because we have a body cavity with our organs lined in mesoderm. So here's the digestive cavity. It's lined in mesoderm. There is a cavity, and that's what it means to be a true coelomate or just coelomate. Here's another image of an annelid, and annelid does mean little ring, and you can see that their segmented bodies make it look like there's little rings around their entire body. So now we're going to be looking at some images of annelids, and their annelids are very diverse. This is a marine annelid. Here's another marine annelid. You can see here in this one specifically that you can see the segmentation of the body. This is also a marine annelid. You can kind of see the segmentation down here. These are organs, sometimes called appendages, that are used for gathering food. You should have seen these on the video. I think they're called feather duster annelids. These are giant tube worms that live down near the deep sea vents, but they are annelids. They are segmented worms. This is a leech. It's a very close-up image of a leech, and you saw one in the video, but you can see here the segmentation of this leech. Here's probably the most common annelid, the one that you've had the most experience with, an earthworm. You can see the segmentation of the body, the little rings. Now we'll move on to how annelids accomplish the 7 survival characteristics. And the first is feeding. Annelids are diverse in how they feed. Some are filter feeders, like those underwater marine annelids. Some are predators, they actually hunt. Some are detritivores, which means they eat dead and decaying matter. That's earthworms. Some are herbivores, they eat plants. And some are parasites, like the leech, that feed off of other organisms. They do have a mouth and an anus, so they do have a complete digestive system. Here's the mouth, and here's the anus, and they do have an intestine that runs through most of the length of their body. In earthworms, they have several organs that are that help with digestion. They have a pharynx, so the mouth end is down here, They have the pharynx pumps food into a tube called the esophagus. So this is the esophagus, and then it goes into the crop where it can be stored right here. After the crop, food is moved to the gizzard, which is right here, where it's ground into smaller pieces. And then it continues through the intestines and then out through the anus. Circulation of annelids. Now this is a big development in our animal phyla. A closed circulatory system. So all annelids have a closed circulatory system. And what closed means is that the blood is contained in a network of blood vessels. We as humans have a closed circulatory system. All of our blood is contained in a network of blood vessels. There are such things as open circulatory systems, and we'll talk about them in other animal phyla. But all annelids have a closed circulatory system. And one or a few of the blood vessels contract and pumps the blood, and it functions like a heart. So it's not a heart like we have. It's not a chambered organ that pumps blood around the body, but one of the blood vessels is highly muscularized and pumps blood throughout the body. So here's in red is the circulatory system of the annelid. You can see it surrounding the digestive tract, which is this lighter pink color. Here's a big enlarged blood vessel that is functioning as the heart with some others along the side, but the blood travels from head to tail and allows annelids to be much larger than the other worms we've talked about because they're able to transport nutrients and oxygen and waste from the body's cells much more efficiently than just through the skin. For respiration, aquatic annelids often breathe using gills, and gills are feather-like organs that help exchange gases under the water. Here's a marine annelid. Okay, we can tell it's an annelid by the segmentation of the body, and these feathery, furry-looking things are gills. What happens at the gills is that the oxygen is absorbed into the gills and then goes into the bloodstream and is distributed throughout the body, and then the carbon dioxide comes back through the blood and is taken out of the gills. Land-dwelling annelids respire through their moist skin. So earthworms don't have any particular organs for respiration. Their skin, their entire outside, is used as a respiratory organ. For excretion, it's important to know that there are two types of waste, digestive and metabolic. And we talked about this when we talked about roundworms. Digestive waste is from the food that you eat, and the metabolic waste or nitrogenous waste, we talked about that with nematodes. That's the waste that our cells produce in the process of living. So digestive waste passes through the anus, so all the unused food will exit through the anus, and then the metabolic or the cellular waste is eliminated from the body by nephridia. And nephridia will eventually develop into a kidney. They're very primitive in annelids, but they do work in helping eliminate cellular waste. So what happens in nephridia, the nephridia are surrounded by blood vessels, and the waste floats around in the blood vessels, and it comes into the nephridia. And the nephridia, as it works its way through the nephridia, it filters out the waste, and then all the waste is emptied out a nephridiopore, or just a hole on the side of the body. So metabolic waste in humans is our urine. Our kidneys filter our metabolic waste, and then it passes out through our kidneys, and then our kidneys make urine, send it into our bladder, and it passes out the body. In annelids, the waste doesn't pass through any type of bladder. It just exits directly out of the nephridiopore. And you can see there's one on each segment. Each segment in an annelid is almost functioning as its own unit. So for response, most annelids have a well-developed nervous system consisting of a brain and several nerve cords. So now we're calling it a brain. In our other worm phyla, we talked about them having ganglia, but in the earthworm, we're saying now that they have a brain. And you can see that here's the brain located in the head region with lots of nerves reaching out the head region. This is called cephalization, this concentration of nerves at the head region. And then there is a nerve cord that you can kind of see through the gut here, and branches of nerves in each segment. Marine annelids have well-developed sense organs. They have sensory tentacles, chemical receptors, statocysts, which help detect gravity, and 2 or more pairs of eyes. And this is a close-up of a marine annelid. There are the eyes. They're not very sophisticated. They can't pick out a lot of detail like we as humans can, but they can sense light and dark and some other general images. And then these palps and antennae help them sense things as well. All marine annelids, or all annelids, not just marine, land and marine, have two major groups of muscles: longitudinal, which run from head to tail, so that's this darker gray muscle, run from head to tail, and then circular, which surround each body segment. And so this is why earthworms kind of have that characteristic kind of inchworm movement where they can gather themselves up and then push themselves along. The gathering themselves up is due to the circular muscle, and then the longitudinal muscle can lengthen them, and that's how they move. Marine annelids have parapodia on each segment, which they use for swimming and crawling. So here is a close-up of a marine annelid, these parapodia. Para means like near to, kind of, and podia means feet. So these are kind of like feet. They're not exactly feet, but they do help swim and crawl. Finally, we have reproduction. All annelids reproduce sexually. In some species, males and females are separate, but in others, they are hermaphrodites, so there's a wide variety. And specifically with earthworms, they have a clitellum in which eggs and sperm are released, and then the clitellum slips off the body and protects the developing annelids. So you may have seen this in earthworms, this clitellum, this large kind of thicker, rounder part. Two earthworms will exchange sperm, and then the eggs, this will slip off the body and the eggs will develop, and then new earthworms will crawl out. So that's all for phylum Annelida.